Hey everyone, welcome to our webinar. I just wanted to take a few minutes to go over some numbers and statistics that my friend Jim Duffy really has helped me out with. And I felt like it was important information to share with not only just our agents, but also people that are considering buying or selling right now, especially if you're renting instead of buying. I know there's a lot of, especially maybe first-time home buyers that are considering, should I wait now? Or should I buy now? And kind of what's going on with the interest rates. And so Jim had shared this information with me the other day, and I felt like it was just great information that I'd like to share with everyone. So we're going to record this, and if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and then you'll be able to share this with your clients or friends down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me share my screen here real quick and just kind of go through, because I agree with you. When there's a time of doubt in the market, right? People tend to just wonder, should I buy? Should I not? Whatever. And this kind of puts some meat on the bones so people can make a more educated decision. So here's my example. And again, this is something for anyone watching who's considering getting in the market. We can customize this to you, to your purchase price, to the county you're buying into, the rent you're paying now, et cetera, et cetera. So what I did here was say, what if someone were buying a $400,000 house in Charleston County, and they're currently renting, and I just left the rent at the median for that size home in Charleston County of $2,384. Plus so you're currently renting at almost $2,400 if you add in renter's insurance. And you're looking at buying a $400,000 home. And we know a couple things. So I want to go over the assumptions here first, because if anyone watching says, I want to get into the housing market, I think, but my assumptions are different, well, then we'll adjust the same form for you. My assumption is rents are going to increase, and they're increasing about 6% per year. With inflation, that seems somewhat realistic. The other assumptions are your home includes property taxes, homeowners insurance, PMI, and repairs. So I'm budgeting for repairs here about $2,000 per year, because that's the difference, right? If you're owning as opposed to renting, guess what? When the water heater goes out, you got to replace it, not the landlord.
Right.
So we're budgeting for that too, trying to make it realistic, right? And I said it's 5% down payment. So you're coming into this with a minimal, you can do just 3% down on conventional, but I just assumed a 5% down payment just to fix something. And I assume rates are a little higher than they are right now. They're in the high sixes right now, but I assume you get a 7% fixed rate, right? We know that's a little higher.
It's kind of like a hopefully worst case scenario.
Look, I just changed it to 6. That's funny. Yeah, hopefully worst case scenario. That's exactly right. I hope they stop going. I think they have, but anyway, that's topic for another day. My final assumption is that homes will appreciate at the historical average for Charleston County, which is about 4% per year. And over time,
pretty conservative.
See, I think it is too. I mean, most people are projecting higher than that this year and next, but it's going to even out over the course of owning. So I just put 4. We can do the forecast, which is about 5% over the next several years. But again, I want to be conservative. I'm with you. On everything here, I want to be conservative.
Right.
So here's what that looks like. You get a 7% rate if you buy. Your rent's increasing at 6% per year if you don't. It means if you own for 9 years, your cash flow difference is better by renting by almost $12,000, right? So that's where most people stop. And they're like, well, yeah, I'm going to wait for rates to come down, et cetera, right? And I understand that. If that's all you have to look at, I would stop there too. The problem is you really can't if you're owning. It doesn't compare. It's apples and oranges. So this $12,000, first you have to be able to afford a higher payment at the beginning. And you can see rent will catch up with that payment and surpass it at 6% increase per year, but it takes a while. And the average out. So you have to be able to afford it, but assuming you can, that $12,000 just goes from your right pocket into your left pocket when you make payments, because you're paying down the mortgage by about almost $47,000 over that same 9-year period. So you just took money from your right hand, put it in your left hand, it's still your money, right?
Right.
and then some. But the other thing is, if we assume that 4% appreciation per year, your home is going to go up about 172, 173,000 if you own for 9 years. And so the net gain, if you add these together, it looks like your net gain's higher than this, but in fact, it's not, because we're taking into account everything. You had closing costs to get into the home, and we're assuming the seller didn't pay the closing costs in this case, the buyer did. You had the cash flow difference, right? Renting versus owning. And eventually you're going to sell, and you have the 6% fees to the realtor to sell the home. So you have costs we're taking into account all the costs, including rehabbing or maintaining the property over the time. And you're still $171,000 to the better if you buy now at the high rates and own for 9 years. So then, yeah, please go ahead. I'd love you.
And that's with just putting 5% down. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say you don't do that and you put 10% down, which is, well, somewhat common I'm seeing these days. All of a sudden, everything looks better, right? Your cash flow is no longer negative, it's positive. Makes sense because the loan amount's lower. And your amortization gain everything goes up if you put 10% down. But again, 5% is fine. It still works very much in your favor if that's what a buyer can do right now.
Right.
The other question,
does it really change that much when you change the price of the home? Like,
yeah,
let's just say we change the purchase price to 500,000.
Okay. Well, the one thing that it did automatically was also raise the rent in tandem. So because a $500,000 home would rent for a higher amount than a 400,000, right? So
exactly. Right.
We can see that. And I changed it I'm going to change it back to 5% down. No, it's actually very, very similar. That's interesting. Now the cash flow.
But look what your net gain is.
Right. True.
So like that, those are very realistic numbers for entry level Mount Pleasant right now.
Yep.
500,000 to get into Mount Pleasant, and the rents are also very expensive in Mount Pleasant. And then at the end of 9 years, you have $232,000. And people talk about building equity and growing. And what if you stay for, let's just say you're only going to stay for 5 years? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that's the most often question I get. So for 5 years, now your cash flow difference is greater because rents haven't quite caught up with the payment, right? At that high rate. But you're still $75,000 to the better, taking into account all the costs to get in, to get out, and maintain the property. You're still $75,000 to the better after 5 years. The problem is, if you're going to be there for a year and a half or 2 years, that's where it makes sense to rent, in my opinion, right now.
Right.
If you know your transfer, like military is very common, right? If you're military and you're transferring to a different base in a year and a half, personally, I would rent.
Right.
Unless you wanted a rental property, but that's a different topic. However, look at this. Here's the magic as well. Every time rates have gone up as quickly as they have this, right now, because remember a year ago, if you bought, you'd be at 3.25% 30-year fixed rate. And now you're at or at least close to 7. Every time that happens, rates drop very, very dramatically, almost as quickly. So I would say within 9 to 24 months, we will likely see rates around 4.5%. So let's say that happens in year 2 and you refinance. You were at 7, now you're at 4.5. So we're going to average it out to about 5 or so. All of a sudden, this all looks better too, because your payment just went down. And we know that's coming.
Right. And you're a positive cash flow.
Yeah, well, exactly. And the cash flow difference just went positive.
So I think that it's been a little bit overused term of marry the house and date the rate. And like somebody brought that term, and
everyone,
I think basically what this whole thing is kind of showing is like, either way, you're building equity in a home as opposed to renting. And in the long run, it's a long-term investment. If you look at it as a long-term investment, it's, it's a win.
So I totally agree. So
any way you slice it.
the big question then becomes, and I'm sure you get this, Lisa, a lot. It's like, well, why don't I just wait for rates to drop then and then buy? Right. The problem with that is there's a lot of people on the fence right now. And I'm going to go back to this number. There's a lot on the fence right now. And in my opinion, this whole 4% appreciation per year is not a straight line, just like we saw the last couple of years, right? It's not a straight line at all. When rates drop, a bunch of people on the fence about buying are going to jump back in, and home prices are going to shoot right up because supply and demand. And so that's where your phrase comes in, I think, marry the house, date the rate. Marry the house, meaning get in now, because I don't think there's a better time in the last 3 years to get into a house. Because remember, just a year ago, the big complaint from home buyers was, man, I'm getting so frustrated. We've put offers in on 5 houses. There's always 8 to 15 other offers, and we just get beat out.
Right.
And that's not happening right now. Not generally. Right. I mean, from what I'm seeing, it's sometimes there's 2 or 3 offers.
No, we're going back to more of like a normal market with just half the amount of inventory. So days on market are getting back to sort of average, I would say. We're seeing a lot more things on the market, 30, 60, 90 days, depending on the condition. Yeah. People still want the same thing. They want homes that are, updated and clean and show well, and they don't want to, put the work in to properties. So I also think there's an opportunity for buyers that are willing to buy a house that does need a little bit of work at a little bit lower price and do some of that work over the course of those years themselves.
Yeah. I think sweat equity, I mean, it adds up so quickly. It's like flipping houses. Investors do that when they flip houses. They just do it quickly, but it's the same with a homeowner.
That's how I built my, wealth over the years. Was my ex-husband and I think we owned 14 homes in 22 years, and we would buy one, we'd live in there for 2 years, we'd fix it up, and then we'd sell it and make a profit, and buy a bigger house and sell it and make a profit. And
that's so smart. Yeah.
And so we always had more money to put down each time we did it, but we did a lot of things ourselves, painted and redecorated and things like that. That really
it's smart. It's a great way to do it. And that way, if you were there for 4 years and you only make that, well, guess what? You still made that. And that goes into the next house, like you're saying, to keep on.
Right. Now you can put $45,000 down more on another house. Right.
Yeah. Totally agree. So let's go to 7. Well, let's go back to 9 where we originally started. Because this is the other thing I think I'm starting to see that I did not see the last couple of years is, what if the sellers agree to pay closing costs, right?
I'm also seeing that as well. They're willing to do rate buy downs for sellers, which I also think is a great idea.
I totally agree there too. So if they paid the closing costs, I mean, the buyer didn't, so we zero that out because the sellers paid. And let's just say they do a buy down, a 2-1, or just say a 1-1 buy down, and they buy it down to 6% from its current 7, just to keep the same numbers. Well, all of a sudden, everything went positive.
Yeah, it doesn't take that much to really make it a great way, a great opportunity to buy. So that's at a $500,000 house with the seller paying $5,000 towards closing costs. Is that what you put?
Yeah, I put 5,500, but yeah, my closing costs would be really about 5,200 on that. So somewhere in that range. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about buying a $500,000 house and in 9 years you have $271,000 in equity, that's almost 50% more than what you started with. Right?
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And again, part of that is because it went up in value, and part of it is just you're paying down the mortgage, which you don't do in rent.
Yeah. Yep. So
I like it. In my opinion, it's a better time for a home buyer. It's a better time to be a home buyer now than it was a year ago, even though rates have doubled, because we know rates will fall and you can refinance in the future.
Yeah. So I felt like, I think that's really, we've covered kind of everything. And I think just like literally being able to physically see the numbers and understand how that works makes, me as an agent advising buyers And hopefully buyers will see the same thing. And we can go through very specific ones. Jim can do this for any buyer that has, a question or is hesitant about wanting to buy. Now we can say, okay, here's what you're potentially, it would look like for you. How
Yeah.
long do I need to stay? What, to based on all of these different variables. And I think it's just really great information to have. It makes me feel more confident working with my buyers and stuff. So that's why I wanted my agents to have this info.
Awesome. Well, it's been great talking, and I agree with you. If any buyers view this and say, well, yeah, but what about my numbers? You can see how easy it is to do. Let's just do it with your numbers, your purchase price, what you're paying in rent, etc.
Right. Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thanks. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to stop sharing. And thank you so much for the time. And thank you everyone for attending the time. And yeah, it's been a pleasure working with you. That's why you're a professional in this business. And I love that, Lisa, because you do want to educate the buyers and give them the tools to make a really an educated decision instead of a knee-jerk reacting to a media decision.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate your time too, Jim. And I don't know if you want to add how people can get in touch with you, or if you'll add that in later. That would be great.
We can add that in later. Now it's alcovamortgage.com. But really, I would encourage them, get in touch with you, Lisa, or one of your agents on your team, and them together we can do a 3-way Zoom call and take just this amount of time or less and do the numbers for a buyer.
Great.
Thanks.
So thanks, Jim. I appreciate your time.
All right. See you soon.
Everyone have a good day.